What's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. The first question we had from last week is there an alternative to allergy medicine to help those who struggle with seasonal allergies or pet allergies? So yes, absolutely. There's a couple different alternatives. One of the big ones that we talk about a lot in the office is an herb called nettle. Nettle is going to help modulate that histamine response. Quercetin can be another very important herb that can help to modulate that histamine response as well. So taking a look at supplements like that can be very helpful. Those are kind of a one-to-one replacer. Instead of using your Claritin or your Zyrtec, you can grab nettle, and a lot of times that has about the same impact. If you combine that with quercetin, again, going to have a really good impact. If you're just looking for supplements online, there's a supplement called D-Hist, which combines those together with a couple other things that has a lot of really good benefits. The other thing is understanding why we're having the allergies in the first place, right? So there's a difference between me and you. I could go walk outside and be totally fine. You walk outside and you have a big issue with the allergies, right? So we want to understand the individual differences that are creating that immune effect. One of the things I always talk about with seasonal allergies or pet allergies is looking at your food sensitivities or your food allergies. If there's a lot of other things that are inflaming and irritating the nervous system or the immune system, then we're going to have a bigger impact when we go out into the environment and we get hit with those environmental allergens as well. The way I always describe this is kind of like a sunburn, where if I'm doing this on my arm right now, it doesn't really cause an issue. However, if I go get inflamed and irritated and damaged from the sun and I get a sunburn, this same amount of pressure is going to start to cause a big issue for me. And so that's just kind of like looking at our food allergies. If we can avoid inflaming and irritating the immune system with the foods that we're eating, the seasonal allergies aren't going to have as big of a detrimental impact as well. So when it comes to seasonal allergies, if you're trying to avoid those medications, number one thing is get food allergies tested so you can see what foods you're eating that may be contributing to that histamine response. And then if you're looking for a natural alternative, things like nettle, quercetin, D-Hist can be very helpful supplements that aren't going to have some of the same side effects that you may see with something like a Zyrtec or a Claritin. So hopefully that helps answer the question about allergies. The next question that was asked is there a reason people sweat profusely compared to others? High water intake, genetics, kind of what's going on with that. So yes, that's an awesome question. And I do have a lot of patients that just don't sweat at all. And I have other patients that sweat a lot. So we kind of either anhydrosis or hyperhidrosis, which would both be kind of your genetic congenital things that cause anhydrosis would be a lack of sweating. Hyperhidrosis is profuse sweating. And so those are things that we would want to rule out before we start talking about sweat. But sweating in general is a very important detox pathway. If we're not sweating, we're not going to be able to eliminate toxins. Our three kind of major emunctories or detox pathways are going to be stool, urine, and sweating. And so a lot of people who deal with constipation, we're not going to be pushing things through the stool. We try to push things through the skin. Sweating is a very important part of that. So a couple different reasons that we might not be sweating. It could be as simple as just dehydration. It could be a peripheral blood flow issue, because in order to start that sweating response, there's two different types of sweating responses. We can have a thermoregulatory sweating response where I walk outside and it's super hot and I start sweating. That's going to be a hypothalamic, so the part of my brain that controls that sweat response is coming from the hypothalamus. We could have a sweat response that's due to sweat, fear, or stress, fear, anxiety. That's going to be more of a limbic sweating response. That's typically going to be the sweating on the palms of the hands, the feet, the armpits, and those are two different mediated pathways for sweating. So we've got to talk about what type of sweating are we not doing. Typically, if you're asking the question from a standpoint of why do some people not sweat, it's probably going to be more of that thermoregulatory sweating. And I know some people who don't sweat at all, or they sweat very little in some situations, and in other situations with spicy foods and things like that, they just start sweating profusely. And so it's not that you can't sweat, it's just that in certain situations, the feedback pathways that control sweating is not working. So we've got to kind of take a look at what that feedback pathway is. So sweating is going to be a hypothalamic stimulation through the sympathetic nervous system. So the brain's going to signal through the nerves in the spinal cord, through the sympathetic ganglion, to different nerve receptors within the skin. It's a different type of sympathetic response than a traditional sympathetic response, where instead of using norepinephrine, it's using acetylcholine. Not important at all. Just understanding that that's why we may have certain sympathetic responses that are being driven while sweating is not being driven, because it is a different type of receptor and a different neurotransmitter that's acting on that receptor that's causing the sweating response. So understanding what's happening in that whole pathway. Getting adjusted can be very important because it can help to modulate that sympathetic nervous system in a sympathetic tone. We've also got to take a look at it and make sure that we've got proper acetylcholine production and utilization within the body. And we've got to make sure that those receptors are activating appropriately as well. And we've just got to make sure that the brain is receiving the signals about temperature. And again, that temperature signal regulation is controlled in the hypothalamus and that thermoregulatory area. So if you're not sweating, that's definitely something we want to focus on and work on because it is such a big part of detox. But there is a lot that can go on in there, so it's not a super simple answer. But to answer the question that was mainly asked is there a reason people sweat profusely compared to others? I would say that for the most part, outside of some underlying genetic conditions, that would be mainly a sympathetic or a parasympathetic response, or it could be a brain-mediated response to fear, anxiety, things like that. And then we just want to understand, why is the brain responding in such a over responding to a stimulus that should not be a threat, and work on kind of the brain health in that situation. So I didn't get any other questions this week, so we'll just do a pretty short AMA. Just remember, guys, I'm going to go live every Tuesday at 5:30. If you have a question, you think about it, just jump on here, comment on the video. I'd be more than happy to answer the question on next week's video. I do also try to post in the morning every Tuesday, so if you see that post pop up, just jump on, ask questions. Otherwise, I'm going to start making up questions and answer, and you may not like the topics that we talk about, so if there's specific things that you want to learn about, just jump on, ask the questions, and I'll make sure to get them answered. So take care, guys. Have a great week, and I will see you back here next Tuesday at 5:30.